Yeah, it is. This meeting is definitely being recorded. Welcome to the show. The gentleman here with me today is Mr. Rodney Lee. He is a friend of my longtime friend since high school, Stan Henderson, and he is a resident of Las Vegas. And Stan whispered to me about Rodney for probably about, I'd say, 2 years, and telling me all these amazing things about this gentleman. And I was like, I've got to have him on the show. I want to hear this. This is exactly the kind of stuff that I want people to hear about and to know about. And so that's why Rodney's here. I appreciate you being here, Rodney. It's good to see you.
Well, thank you, sir. I'm honored to be invited to do anything. So just to be here is an honor. And it's a tribute to, the spirits of our ancestors who all have a story to tell, and they continue to tell those stories through us. So I'm honored to be here and honored to be a part of your programming.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And I know everyone else is going to appreciate it. You know, it's easier for you to say, it's better for you to say it from the horse's mouth. So tell them a little bit about yourself and what you're doing. First of all, you are a published author.
Yes, sir, I am.
Yeah, and you just put out your book, your newest book. You want to put that up so folks can see it?
My newest book is called Along These Trails. It's a book of poetry and photography because I did as well take all the pictures that are in this book. And it's a work that I'm very proud of, and I hope we have an opportunity to talk about it. I can tell you what its intent is and how it maybe applies to not only myself, this state of Nevada, but to all of humanity, because I was just really right. Every writer tries to connect to our humanity and draw that thread that we can all find something in common with. So. Yeah, that's a lot of why I'm here today, and what I hope we have an opportunity to talk about.
Absolutely. All right, so what tell people what you do for a living when you're not authoring books and creating the photography for it?
Well, thank you. I'm an educator. I've been an English teacher in the Clark County School District for 26 years. I am currently back in the classroom. I've served as an administrator. I was a central office administrator in the Equity and Diversity Education Office for 5 years. I've worked on grants. I've served on programs. I've opened schools. I've opened 2 high schools in the Valley. I've had a rich and wonderful experience working with the Clark County School District. I currently teach at Summit View Youth Center, which is a maximum security facility for convicted youth. But even though they're convicted, they're not forgotten in our system, and I'm there to try to provide them an education and a touch of humanity throughout their day to see if we can get them to read and write and discover themselves as they discover the world. So that's what I do and what I have been doing. I'm very humbled by it. It's just been, I don't really talk a lot about my service in education because it's just that, I have a lot of friends that talk about their jobs and it all sounds very exciting, but there's this part, this like a minister. You just don't really talk about how you commune with your students because it's private. But I have students that are, my former student aide and student is a state senator. I have attorneys that I've been an educator for. I have students along the whole spectrum of our community because I've been serving in this community for so long and have touched so many students' lives. But again, that's just it's a sacred honor to be an educator and for families to entrust their children to you. So it's just, it's been fabulous, man.
Wow. Impressive. So you just said a mouthful. First of all, good on you. I love the passion. And, the tagline for this show is art is life and life is art.
Oh, yes,
and right
sir.
in what you just said right there, I know you get it. I know you do. You literally have taken your life and turned it into art and taken that art and brought it into life. And I think that's beautiful. You just said something that my wife does also. They invited me to go and I haven't gone yet. And then, of course, the pandemic hit. She's been working with high risk youth. They put them in, it's really, it's bullshit.
Highly targeted youth.
Highly targeted. Thank you, sir. Thank you. I get a little, it really bothers me. I rage against the machine frequently. But it's predominantly Black and Latino males, not so many females. And their offense, being tardy or being hungry. And they didn't make it to school on time because they had to get food for their brothers and sisters and mom and dad and whoever else it is. And then they end up in these detention centers and they're deemed trouble. And that doesn't happen to white children.
Right.
And so she's been doing that for about 4 years. And she speaks out here in the Los Angeles area. And we know a gentleman, Richard Nichols, who works there. There's several of them. I forget all the names of them. I just remember one off the top of my head right now, Camp Gonzalez. And it's just interesting that you said that. I had no idea that that was part of what you did. She goes there and speaks to him about the, about her growing up in the middle of the civil rights movement. And we'll just leave it at that, Yes, but I love your attitude that it's a sacred honor to be able to educate and to be entrusted with those lives. I don't hear that very often.
Oh, I don't know why. Because every day that's what educators do. And most of us don't talk about it.
Yeah. So what could you just elaborate on that? Like your thoughts, your feelings, your experiences in the education system around that?
Well, the system is different than teachers. And I want to make that distinction very clear.
I love it. I love it.
Is what the system does, which I've had an opportunity to get a sneak peek at from the periphery in the administrative role that I served, is very different than what educators do and what they give. And like I said, the communion between teachers and students, that's the art, and the science of the profession, right? That's the art and the science of it, because we're connecting with human beings. The system replicates itself, right? We know that. That's what the system is designed to do. So we're just trying to replace our students' parents in the system, right? And that system that we're preparing them for is obsolete. So there's no role for a lot of our kids' parents anymore, their jobs. We're not yet preparing. In some places we do, in pockets, because there's teachers, there's people working within the system. We're preparing kids for to be able to think critically and to find their way in the world that we don't even know what it is yet. But for the most part, the system is there to reproduce itself. So we live in Las Vegas within the state of Nevada, and there's a great need for us to have dealers and, pit bosses and maids and line cooks and all the things we need to run this town as it stood. And that's what we have been doing, and that's what our system perpetuates. We also need gamblers and people who believe that games of chance are a sustainable way of living your life.
Yes,
we need a lot of girls to swing around all the brass poles we've built in this town, and temples of lust and lasciviousness. And that's what our system reproduces.
Wow.
Right? That's what it reproduces, because that's what the demand is. That's what our business leaders come to the halls of education and ask for. And that's what they get. They don't say it overtly like I'm saying right now, but that's what they're asking for. We have to know, because that's what makes it. We need some miners too. We need some people to major in mining, because we still make a lot of money from that. And there's other industries here. In Reno, we just opened up to Microsoft, and other big high tech industries are beginning to move in because of the tax-free base here in Nevada. So things are going to change. But again, we have to be at the cutting edge and looking and being able to predict what's going to happen in the future and being able to prepare our kids for it. But we have a system that's archaic and is built on a factory system.
I do not disagree with you. And I want to ask you a question. Do you believe that system is reflective of the collective mindset?
Yes, absolutely. Like I said, we reproduce ourselves, and that's it. And it's not by accident. Like you said, when you talk about a system, we talk about something that was put together. Right. That, we have a constitutional basis for all things at the national and at the state level. So we have constitutions that are reflective of our ideology, and we have laws and, systems in place to make sure those things happen. And that's how it goes down. Just like even when it comes down to keeping the kids off the street, there's certain kids we want to keep off the street.
True.
Yeah.
True. Was your book born out of that? Out of that energy that I'm hearing that we're seeing right now?
Well, hopefully it is. It's like I said, it's more artistic. So a lot of it I don't come out and blatantly say. I do talk about the system in a portion of the book called The Dark Trail, but it's a book about a quest. And that quest is to find myself here in Nevada, because as an African-American male, you know, we've ventured all over the world. The diaspora of Africans have led us to every end of the earth.
True.
All people come from African people. So, you know, it's just absolutely true. And in that, sometimes we forget, though, our place because we have a westernized view of who we are, our history, and what makes us who and what we are. So we take a place like Nevada, and it seems like it's born out of that spirit of the Wild Wild West, which we divorce the presence of African Americans from. Correct. So I had to come to where I am and where I stand, and I'm a poet, and I use the medium of words and stories to reflect on what does it mean for me to be here? What is my place in this land? How am I connected to Nevada? What do people like me have to do with the founding of this state and this, well, you know, without outside of that, without our nation, right? So it's just an introspective look on the role of African Americans, Native Americans, Latin Americans, the whole collective, the real collective of people and heroes whose stories make up this great history of this place. But we only hear one perspective of that typically.
Talk that talk, Mr. Lee. I love it. Yes, you're right. You're absolutely right.
So
do you think, sorry, it just occurs to me that, you know, with this book, do you think this book could be added into the curriculum? Now, I know that's a huge question, but do you not think that might, right, I know you're laughing.
In part, because, you know, there's things in it that are, excuse me, there's writings that I have in here that are not necessarily appropriate for young people because, you know, a lot of it's adult themed. You know, and I talk about, like I said, that discovers multiple layers. There's a historical layer to the book. There's a personal history layer to the book. There's a cultural history layer to the book. And, you know, so there's many layers and there's parts of it that are very appropriate for that. But I could think of a couple of poems that really, you know, I don't know what kids would necessarily get out of it unless they were at a stage in the place to have someone to really lead them through a conversation about why I wrote that piece and all of that. And that's just being so putting the cart before the horse of my work and what it means. Because, you know, that's why, I don't think it's appropriate for schools right now. No one needs to be studying my work in that way. But for those who have ears to hear and a heart to receive my message, it's written down because that's the medium we have, but I really prefer to perform my work and for it to be a live art. So that's really how it's meant to be received. And yeah, that's really what I do. You know, it's a oral tradition. That's how all stories from all places came to be. We just somewhere along the line began to write them down about, you know, 2,000 years ago, 2,500 years ago. But for the most part, we live in the vibrations, the sounds and the silences of the human voice. And, you know, I don't do it on video per se, because I just, it's missing that connection of human being to human being. Like I said, the sounds and the vibrations, you have to be in the room to feel that with my work. That's just how I feel about my work. You know, I need to be able to see you, connect with you, feel what you're feeling in response to what I'm saying, and continue to give you more so we can share something. And so it's hard for me to turn my poetry into a video medium, though, you know, I've tried. I have some videos out there, and, you know, the book part is just what you know, that's how you preserve your words forever. But in my preference would be to always be able to give a live performance of my work.
Wow. Okay. I love that. I love that. So interesting. Okay. So that's fair enough. And I mean, we're just talking here. I was just curious, like, where you stood with that. Because there's a lot of passion coming through, and no, it's great. It's great. Don't apologize for that. I love it. We need more of that in this world, a lot more of it. And it's just, you know, I agree with you. You know, the systems are set, as you said, to replicate. I've never thought of it that way, but that is true. And I also believe, and you touched on this, that, you know, they're representative of the collective ideologies, thoughts of everyone participating in it in our society. Mm-hmm. And so as you're saying this to me, it's just things that occur to me. You know, you're responding to that, and you're choosing art to respond to it. And you're choosing not only words and the written word and the spoken word when you have the occasion to, which right now during the pandemic has been limited, but you're also using visual medium, photography. which is beautiful. Now, do you shoot in black and white like the cover?
Yes, sir. You shoot in, because today is digital photography. So you
Right.
shoot in whatever color, but I'm attracted to black and white, and I like to transform the pictures. And it's cheaper to do it in a book if all the pictures are in black and white. It also makes a statement, though. The way the black and white, the light and dark play with one another, the shadows and the light, is just, you can say a picture's worth 1,000 words, and it truly is. It truly is.
No doubt, no doubt.
Sure.
How long have you been practicing photography?
Not very long. This is my third book. My first book, there's pictures in it because my first book is about my family. It's called Family Words, and it's just a homage and a collage of portrait poems to my family. My mother was the youngest of 10. My mom's maiden name was Fingers. So they were the 10 fingers that molded me, if you will. It was one of the poems that I have in the book. But then each one of my aunts and uncles, I just wrote a portrait of them. They were all alive when I was a kid, and they're all dead now. And my grandfather, who I knew very well, who lived off and on with my mom and I, was born in 1888.
Wow.
And so my mom was the youngest of the 10. So I'm from a very old family. And again, I saw them all alive and in their glory days, to see each and every one of them pass from this earth and to become one of my ancestors whose spirit still guides me,
Sure. That means
sorry, bro. I've been locked up in this house a long time.
It's all right. You don't have to apologize, man. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Where are your people from? Where's your family from?
Missouri is where I traced them to, for the most part. My grandfather was from Arkansas, and but then my grandmother's from Mississippi, and again, we're just part of that African diaspora that moved us from the south to the north in search of jobs. That's what my mom and them generation were those first generations moving up to Chicago and Gary, Indiana, and up into Michigan, which is where which is where I'm from. I'm from Gary, Indiana. I have uncles and aunts in Chicago. I have up in Michigan, and all the way up to Flint, Michigan. But I have family scattered that way because they came up north looking for work, and they brought the South with them. And like I said, my grandfather had the honor, man, of knowing that dude. He was born in 1888, man. Like I said, he was my first storyteller. And I learned the art of telling stories sitting at his knee. And I didn't even know that I was learning African-American fiction or stories. I just thought I was learning stories about my grandfather because he always inserted himself in those stories.
Wow.
And as a kid, I didn't know.
Story? What's the earliest story?
So, John Henry, he was John Henry Shaker whenever he told me a story about John Henry. You know what a Shaker is?
Yes.
Yeah, the dude who turns the so he would that's the perspective. That's just just the tall tales, and that's how he brought all those stories to life for me. And
smart. That's really good storytelling.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's the first one you remember? Was it the John Brown story?
John Henry.
Henry,
that was just one of many, but he just talked about his life and growing up where he did, and riding to school on his sled because it was downhill, and the long walk home, of course, and just just how different the world was then than it is now. Yep.
What was your grandfather's name?
Elvin.
Elvin
Wildenar Fingers. Yes, sir.
Elvin Wildenar Fingers?
Wildenar.
Spell that.
Wildomar.
Wildemar. What an unusual name. Where do you think that came from? Who gave that?
I have no idea.
No idea. Okay. All right. Yep. I just thought I'd ask. That's interesting.
Yep.
Wow.
But he was the greatest man on earth to me. My grandfather was.
That's beautiful.
He taught me, like he taught the rest of our family, that our story always begins with ourselves.
True.
So that was, again,
so much genius in that, so much wisdom in that.
Yeah. So that was part of the impetus for the book. It begins with the first poem in my book is called, it's been so long since I've actually even read through this. It's called The Ocean of Memory, right? The first poem is called The Ocean of Memory, and it's about the Middle Passage. And it's about when the ancestors came over in the Middle Passage, they brought a Nansi with them. And a Nansi is a spider god, right? He's the god of stories, the god of words. And he came with them and he taught them how to survive through stories, right? And the multiple ways that you can use stories to survive. You can create heroes like John Henry that no matter what level of oppression you're in, you're still a Superman. You create the strength that your people need to continue to move forward. You celebrate yourself in those words. You create your cunning and intelligence and wisdom in characters like Bruh Rabbit and Bruh Fox that could outthink the system.
Right.
that through words and through communication, clandestine communication could carry a message of hope and freedom to a generation that was disallowed words. So, it was just, and that's what this first poem is about, the Ocean of Memory. And it just talks about how in spite of that oppression that we survive because we are survivors, and how proud we should be of our people for surviving that oppression and turning it into art. It's just, it's a glorious story. And that's really where I wanted to begin, because I wanted to root this book in myself. And I'm from that tradition. I'm from those stories. I'm from Anansi, who existed before America in an image of himself. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Brought something here, brought an art form that enriched this country. And I want to always remember my ancestors in that light.
May I just correct you and say it continues to enrich this country?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Not a correction, that's an addendum, but yes,
an addendum, yes, thank you, yeah. And I don't disagree with anything you said, and that's why we're talking. That's exactly why we're talking. I love that. It's important. And without telling and talking about this history of Black America, of Latin America, of Asian America, of all the Middle Eastern Americans, of all these Americans, without telling those stories, you're robbing the people of the nation.
Yeah, you're bleaching it white.
Correct. You're bleaching it all white.
Yeah.
And too white is never right.
Too much of anything is never right, my friend.
You just took the next sentence out of my mouth. Too much of anything is never right.
Right.
Everything has its level, everything has its blending, everything has its seasoning to it. And when I first met my wife, if I may, for just a moment, she was in the process of writing her first book, and it's called Partners to History, Martin Luther King Jr., Ralph David Abernathy, and the Civil Rights Movement. And I didn't know anything. I just knew this woman was, beautiful and the best actress that I'd seen, and I don't know how long. And me being an ex-athlete, I was like, well, if my game is going to get better, I've got to work with the best in the game. So she's the best that I see right now. I'm going to go work with her. So she's writing this book. And I look, and she's got 300, 400, 500, 8x10 glossy black and white photos on the ground. And it's all of the movement. I'm like, oh, that's so interesting, just in my head. And she's got, I want to say like 14 to 20, 8.5 by 14 legal sheets, yellow legal pads. And she's written by hand with pencil. I'm like, what the fuck is she doing? What's going on? So I casually say, hey, what's that? Oh, I'm writing my book. I'm like, oh, who's that? She goes, oh, well, that's Daddy and that's Uncle Martin. I'm like, Uncle Martin and Dad? Who is she? And that was my foray into Black history. Okay, African American history in this country. Because up until that point, in the current whitewashed, white supremacist, and I'm sorry to say it, folks, but you need to know what you're dealing with in order that you can understand what it is and progress past it, a racist system. And here's why I say that. I didn't know anything about these two great men except one sentence, maybe one chapter in a history book about Martin Luther King was assassinated. Now, if that's all you know about him, you're missing everything, literally everything. He's a doctor, a theologian, an orator, a family man, a father, a brother, a sister, an uncle, a cousin, a nephew, right? And that's just the basics. That's just the commonalities that we all share. The more that I have learned about Black history, the more I've learned about the movement, the more I've learned about the diaspora, the 400 plus years, the innumerable, immeasurable, because they wouldn't keep records of the deaths of the slaves in transit, let alone those that died at the hands of the white man when they landed in this country. The more humbled I was, the more embarrassed I was, the more ashamed of that side of me I was, and the more I realized how much I'm missing out because of my own ignorance and the way the system is set to, as you said earlier, replicate itself. So that's one of the reasons that I'm sitting here talking with you, because that, of course, I married into this family, and you know, if this white guy's not going to talk about it, I don't know any white guys that are going to talk about it.
Right.
And so I'm happy to have you here. I'm ecstatic that you're talking like this, and I'm going to be quiet and let you continue. With the book, I would like to ask you about the photography. When were you inspired? What made you think about that? Because I think it's beautiful to do that.
Well, thank you. I started that story. We went off on a tangent. We ended up.
No. Don't you apologize for a thing. I love what you're doing. I love it.
So I said my first book had some pictures in it, but they were family photographs because they were my aunts and uncles and my family. And I like the idea of pictures alongside of my words if I'm going to put something in print. So my next book, A Page and a Pen, was a collection of poetry that I used photos in, but they were stock photos that I got off the internet, you know, and I paid to have them, you know, to be able to use them. And I went, this is ridiculous. I'm never going to do this again. From here on out, I'm going to include my own photographs. So I bought my first camera and my first lens, and then I got my second camera, and about $8,000 later,
I knew that was coming.
I really kind of immersed myself in photography in a crash course, just teaching myself. I did take a class at community college, but I just learned how to take pictures. And I don't know if it's, you know, if they're good photographs or not. I like them, and I'll put them in the book. And, you know, other people seem to like them. And that's what art is, right? Just sharing your perspective and the way you see the world. So they're just the way I see the world. And it just accompanies those words that I'm writing to go along with that. And I hope folks enjoy the moment inside my mind, right? Because that's what reading and sharing and all that is about. Just kind of getting to see how I see things and me sharing my perspective. And that idea of perspective and photography just goes together.
True. Yeah, no doubt. Listen, be careful, because the next thing you're going to do is start making moving talking pictures. And then that stuff gets really expensive.
Yeah, I'm sure it does.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, it's funny. It's like, of course, you know, necessity is the mother of invention. And so, you know, you start paying for it. You're like, hell, I don't need to do that. And those don't really mean anything to me anyway. I can take a better picture than that. And you invest in it and start doing it. But it's beautiful, because that is what stories are. And that's what books do. They give you a glimpse into the mind of the author and of that time and of the thinking and the challenges. You know, someone said the other day, and I agree with it, you know, you'd be better served to just turn off the news on your television. Just turn that off and never watch it. There's nothing they're telling you that you need to know that you wouldn't hear from your friends, your wife, your husband, your schoolmates, your peers, whatever. You'd be better served to read a book from history that's parallel to the time that you're currently in. You'll learn more and be better able to respond. And I thought, yeah, you know what? That's good advice. Yeah. So let's talk about this book currently.
Okay.
What was the desire? How was it? What was it born out
of? Trump being elected president.
Oh, talk that talk. All right, let's
go. It really was. It was because I refused to go into this place of objective negativity and really give him a whole bunch of attention. And I figured, you know, I need to, it was such a shock. I had to remember the history of our country and the history of myself and my people and how we got here to be able to deal with it. So again, that's what this book is supposed to be. It's about how I'm connected to this state of Nevada. And again, I'm gonna get around to talking about it and talk about what I've discovered in my journey. But the introduction of Anansi was very important in the first poem, because Anansi is a recurring character throughout the book. He's my spirit guide, if you will, on this quest. So I began by acknowledging him and acknowledging the ancestors in the ocean of memory. And I go from that to current location, Las Vegas. And I write, my next poem in the book is called City of Dreams. And because I've been here 35 years, bro. I'm out here in the desert, you know, like Jesus was in the desert for 40 days and nights. You know, the Jews were lost in the desert for 40 years. You know, I'm putting in time out here in the desert. And it's a great place, man. It's a beautiful place. It teaches you a lot about life and living, because life is near the bone in the desert. And this state of Nevada has a real fascinating history, and that it was really built around mining and around this idea of gambling and this whole idea of luck and how you can strike it rich and how you can boom and how you can
Correct.
bust. And there's so many ghost towns, man, in this place, this state. I'm sure all states, but in this state in particular, there's culture built on top of culture, on top of culture, on top of culture. And people who've come here seeking a fortune have done well, and then see it all go away into nothing, into ghost towns. And that's just it. I think this state has such an important story to tell. And that perspective of the desert allows us to see that, because the desert always reclaims itself. If you leave it alone for 5 years, you could build anything there. The desert's going to break it down. There's going to be desert when you come back to visit it. So it's such a lesson, such a metaphor in being here. And in particular, this city of Las Vegas, this glittering gem, this oasis, this mirage out here in the middle of nowhere. And it's just, so I wanted to bring that setting. And a lot of it is about this place. It's about Vegas, but it's really about the state of Nevada. It's about the desert. It's about taking chance and luck and really striking out to do the best you can with what you have in life, which is a story of not just about here, but any place. Right. So
true.
That's where it goes. Then I go on. The next poem just kind of talks about how I got here, and talks about how I follow. And then the whole other metaphor in the book is trails, because the title of the book is Along These Trails. And it talks about how a trail of ink across military orders led me to the desert, right? And that's how I got here while I was in the military. So I came out here in the Air Force. And again, that becomes an important thread, because I'm from a long line and generation of people who have served this nation. My son currently is in the military. My stepson served. He did 2 tours in Afghanistan. My brother was in the military. My father was in the military. It goes down a long generation of people who have served this country. And I believe in that. I'm really a patriot, man, when it comes down to it, because I believe in the ideas of freedom that are wrapped up in this whole image of America. And my people have given too much to it for me to abandon it. So I stand up and I serve it, and I'm willing to fight for it, and I have demands of it, because it's mine as much as it is anybody else's. And I don't come crawling and begging and asking for anything, because my God gave me freedom. No man can grant me that. The only thing this system needs to do is stop denying people a seat at the table, because they actively do that. We're already free. You don't have what an arrogant position to think that you're going to set somebody free. What gives you the audacity to think that you have the power to free a spirit that was created by a force you can't even comprehend? You're going to free it? Who are you?
Exactly.
Exactly.
Well said.
It comes from this place, but it's about finding my place within this place. But when you begin to look at this place, the first thing, and I do this whole dance with Anansi, and I discovered a spider, and I say, Anansi, is it you? And I ask him to show me the truth, right? And so he says, well, in order to know the truth, he doesn't say that, but when it comes to in order to know the truth, you have to know the truth about this land and who was here first. And who was here first?
Wooden white people.
Right. So then I go from that point to looking at the history of the Native Americans, the multiple nations of Native Americans who live in this land called Nevada. Those forgotten people who we named our streets after and our mountains after, and, all these things around us after, who we eat their food still, who the food went and saved Europe. These people that we forget, we want to say conquered people, these great nations that were just destroyed over time from contact, a lot of times through germ warfare, not just through gunshots, because we know when the Indians encountered the settlers or the white folks, whatever you want to call them, when they came in, they died 7-1 in every incursion with Native Americans. So it wasn't that white folks came in here and cowboyed and gangstered and just whooped their behinds and they somehow just gave them this land. That's not what happened. So, we begin to go back and begin to really look at that history, who was here, and to give homage to them, to give thanks for them, for the sacrifice and the blood of their ancestors whose land we stand on today. We owe them that.
Truth.
And I couldn't start my book. I couldn't open up. I couldn't begin to talk about my place here without saying I'm a guest of these folks who were here long before us. Right.
Wow.
So I go back and I really begin to talk about that history. And I have several poems about that. And I just wanted to really have a whole dedication of my book to that. And it's the beginning of what I call the historical trail, because let me talk about that, because it's about 5 trails in my book. Go ahead, sir.
Name the trails. Would you name the trails? Okay.
So the first part of the book, the introduction, is called Anansi and the Trail. That's what the first like 6 poems are called. The second part of the book is called Nevada Before, or what I call the historical trail. Part 3 is the dark trail. Part 4 is called Pocket Magic. And then part 5 is Entering City Limits, Las Vegas Watch Trails. So the whole book is structured around this idea of trails and traveling trails and Anansi and the trail. So Anansi, that this African god, directs me to look back and pay homage to the Native Americans who were here first. Okay.
That is so beautiful, man. I really love the Nansi, and I love the imagery of that. And then the voice and the, well, you know, like you said, it doesn't have a voice, but yet it does, because that Nansi, that spirit, that energy of the ancestors is coming through you, coming through whomever, right? Mm-hmm. I can have a Nansi. I am necessarily of Mother Africa, as we all are, as you said.
We all are. Mm-hmm.
Correct. And, you know, you said so much, man. That's really fantastic. I want to point out here that I've talked to a lot of people. I've spoken to many authors before, historians and whatnot, but I don't hear a lot of white men ever talk about the respect and that they are the guest of those that preceded them who were of this land. And you did, without a moment's notice. And see, that kind of stuff to me invigorates me and it inspires me, because collectively we're stronger and greater than we are divided and separate. Mm-hmm. And, you know, if the civil rights movement message was anything, it was that together we are greater.
Absolutely.
And by the way that we're going to stay together and collected and strong is by knowing one another's history. And that comes through communication. Mm-hmm. It really, truly does. You know, my wife had a little fight, side note, with the publishers of her book. They wanted to put a cover on the book that was all Black men on the front. She's like, oh, no. Mm-hmm. No. There were white Jews, there were white men, there were mm-hmm. white ladies, there were Latinos, mm-hmm. there were Asian. It was a mixture. Hawaiians, mm-hmm. there was a mixture, Islanders, everything. Mm-hmm. I want that on the cover. And that was a fight. And again, a white-owned business was having a problem with the true and accurate depiction of the civil rights movement. So I love what you're saying. Sorry to interrupt. That's beautiful. I love that Nansi. Spell Nansi.
Okay, let me check so we make sure we have a proper spelling here.
Yes, sir. I want people to hear that, because you know you told me about this when we were texting. Mm-hmm. God, I think it might even been like 8-9 months ago, and I was like, I've never heard that before, and you let me know what it was, and then I went and did research on it. I was like, this is incredible. I love this.
It's of course capital ANANSI, Anansi. Anansi. There are alternate spellings of it. Anansi is a shapeshifter and comes in many forms.
That's it.
The spider is one form, his most prominent form, but Anansi comes in many shapes and in many forms, and that's what happens in my book. I take that idea of Anansi is in this spider, but throughout this book, I revisit that idea in multiple places.
Why do you resonate with the spider so much, since it's a shapeshifter? I'm just curious.
Well, it's not so much because it was a shapeshifter, but because it came over on the Middle Passage with Africans, with our ancestors. And I'm just harkening back to that idea that these stories, that words, the way we communicate with one another are important to our survival.
Absolutely.
Right? It's how we keep ourselves alive through stories. Absolutely. It's how we get ourselves through tough times through stories. You know, it's how we love one another through poetry. You know, it's how we lift one another up through powerful essays. It's how we use words, right? The Anansi is about us using words because he's the god of words. He's the god of stories. He weaves them. He weaves them in and out of our lives, and he weaves us together by us being able to use words. And that's why I make that connection to Anansi. And what Anansi was showing me is that Native Americans use words too. You know, and they had their own way of honoring that is greater than them. You know,
that's right.
But after I talk about that, you know, Nevada and Las Vegas in particular has interesting history. Like Las Vegas, most people don't know, was discovered by a Mexican. So
go ahead, man. I love it.
go ahead and I tell that story. and his name, it was Rafael Rivera. And he first came here in 1829. And he laid down the foundation of us outsiders, Westerners, because there's so many perspectives. And another thing in this book is the past, present, and the future exist at the same time. And that's one thing I'm trying to show, and that we haven't evolved or grown from when the Native Americans were here. We've just passed the baton, but the human spirit is was just as powerful then as it is today. We're not inferior to those people who inhabited this place in any way. They are kindred spirits with us. And it's really, really about that, and really about acknowledging that. And the same thing with Rafael Rivera. I guess it's trivial that a Mexican discovered here, but it's not, because it's been denied for so long.
No, it's not. It's not trivial at all. No, I agree. Right? It's not at all. No.
And that this was northern Mexico for so long.
That's right.
And it was stolen.
Correct.
We can go back to the Treaty of Guadalupe and all that. There's a whole lot of history that we don't talk about, that I try to sneak in a little bit in this book. And again, that poem that I have about Rafael Rivera is called El Corrido de Rafael Rivera. And it just really talks about how he was the first one who came here, and how he has this song in his heart, which never happened, but he had this song in his heart that his descendants would come here in great masses, and they would. And then I just talk about how it's true. That today when we look at Las Vegas, man, there are so many Latinos here. So many people from Mexican descendancies and other places in South America who live here and call this place home, that they're part of this too. They're not outsiders. They're not intruders. They're part of our community, and they have been from the very beginning. And that's what I'm trying to show, that our perception of what happened isn't necessarily correct, because all people were involved.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
I go from Rafael Rivera to Jacob Dotson, who is a dude that most of us don't even know. We know John C. Fremont's name very well. And there's a street named after him. And Fremont was an explorer who came out here. He discovered all of this. What we don't know, I told you this might happen.
That's not even a problem.
He had a scout with him who was an African-American man who was 19 years old, named Jacob Dotson, who was born free in Washington, D.C., and he came out here with Fremont. See, Fremont was a Canadian. He didn't have the racial hangups of other folks here in what we call America. So
Isn't that interesting?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's as though that delineation, that line, he wants to let you know he's part of it too. That's all, or she.
Guys, cut it out.
It's like, hey man, I'm here too. You talk to Black Canadians, and it's like, I think the first time it hit me, the difference between a Black Canadian and a Black American. My God, man, we are a mess. Americans, United States is a mess.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely a mess. Yeah. And
that's one of my favorite poems. Would you mind if I read that poem?
I wish you would.
Because it's like one of those hidden histories that, I hold so near and dear to me as a Nevadan that we just don't talk about. There's no bridges built to him. There's no statues built for him, but he was an intricate and important part. Again, his name was Jacob Dotson, and Jacob Dotson, beyond the Negro who rode with Fremont. Young JD wrestled the savage winter night, stood victorious come the dawn, sunlight beaming behind him a celestial crown. The whiteness of the impassable Sierras flung over his shoulder a cape. King of the horizon, scout, finding paths ahead of the pathfinder. Confident, broad-shouldered, 6 foot, statuesque, hair dark, dusky, coarse. A Black man, coffee cocoa colored, young, masculine, powerful, silent, skilled. Jacob Dotson, scout, explorer, carved a path for the Fremont Party across Utah, Nevada, California, all the way to the Pacific Ocean. Crisscross explored this silver state, even here, the Valley of Meadows. His footsteps, history marks the first Black footsteps in the territory of Nevada. Pioneer, forefather, 19 years old, born free to a free Black woman, a free Black man in Washington, D.C. Journeyed along these trails during the early years of Nevada's history, the waning days of the Native Nations' reign, the unfortunate intersection. And like all the intersections, streets, buildings, bridges, dams that go without his name, silent through the high mountain trails, silent through history. His efforts during the Mexican-American War, where JD, Don Jesus Pico, and John C. Fremont rode round trip Los Angeles to Monterey, 8 days, 840 miles, turned the tide, what they call the conquest of California. Another unheralded note in the song of history. Black men like JD, Big Jim Beckworth, Johnny August Johnessy, the others, frontiersmen, furriers, explorers, opening paths to new beginnings along these trails. Yet, most are deceived. Sold the myth of solely cotton picking. Every black man, woman, property, a slave of no standing, believing we were never here, never participated, never belonged to the wilderness, the mountains, meadows, streams, mine, the land, the West, the legacy, the history, denied. Like Jacob Dotson, returned to Washington, D.C., plans to raise a black army, 300 strong, turned down, deprived by Lincoln the right to fight, enjoying the Civil War, battle for their freedom. A great man, forgotten, now found along these Nevada trails.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
So, that's,
Thank
you know,
you for
again,
that.
just want to
Thank you
hail
for
these
that.
people as heroes, man, because they were. And we just don't call and say their names like we do Fremont, like we do Lewis and Clark, like we do the other great American explorers. But right there with all of them, man, all the way back to the very beginning, you know, in the exploration of America, we've had Black explorers here with Columbus, after Columbus, St. Augustine, Fort Moise, which was an integrated multiracial settlement in America long before America was America. You know, descendants of these folks lived and mixed with the Native Americans and lived in this country forever, long before 1619. You know, I love the whole thing we did with 1619, but what 1619 did was make us think that the first Black blood that came to this country came here in 1619 in chains. And that's just simply not true. Not true. It's not
This
the
man's
real
telling you the
history.
truth.
We forget Estevan the Black. You know, we forget all those who came with those early explorers. Estevan the Black was one of a survivor of 800 men who came here, who was the only one who was able to return to Spain and tell the story, given his own expedition, who came back here 4 more times. We never talk about that man.
Never heard his name before, Rodney. Never heard his name before. Say his name again.
Estevanico or Estevan the Black. Very well documented.
Estevan the Black. Oh.
Estevan the Black, same person.
All right.
You know, same
See,
person.
look at that racist shit, Estevan the Black.
Yeah.
That's how the white guy recognizes him. Oh, Estevan the Black.
Yeah. The Black people that were here with Cabeza de Vaca, you know, when his ship upended in the Gulf of Mexico.
Right.
Back in the 1500s. You know, I mean, like I said, there's been anyway, there's so much more to our history to tell. And I wanted to make sure that I was able to tell it. And again, I wanted to find my place in this history. So I know from the very beginning, African Americans had something to do with the development of this territory that we call Nevada.
It's so obvious.
Mm-hmm.
It's so obvious, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And here I'm having a moment again. The systemic and institutionalized racist narrative story about the creation, discovery, pioneering of this land and
country,
the peoples. Right? Yeah. And, you know, as you read that, I got teary-eyed because, you know, first of all, the way you read it is very powerful. They're your words. And so it's like, it's a real treat when you get to hear the author read their poetry. But the second thing is, you know, I'm not better for not knowing this. I was cheated. I've been cheated.
Right.
And, you know, when white folks that realize that there's a problem in this country with race can get to that place, I think then we can start to have honest dialogue and realize there's nothing to fear. I have nothing to fear about any other man or woman or child or story. And you don't have anything to fear from me. Well, you know, you can make a strong argument that's not true. Because if I look back at history, well, yeah, you're laughing.
Yeah,
but I have
true.
to correct myself. Yeah, white people are I would, you know, if I had your melanin as opposed to the melanin that I have right now, I'd probably be a hell of a lot more. I always jokingly say this, but I'm going to say it right now. I'd either be incarcerated, institutionalized, or dead. With my personality. Oh yeah, 100%. That's a problem, folks. That's a problem. And if white folks are hearing this for the first time, and you're still with us, thank you. And I admire you, and I acknowledge you for doing so, because it's not an easy conversation to have, but you only get better hearing this, and you only get better acknowledging and owning this, you know? Sorry, I don't mean to get preachy. That's powerful, man. You're hitting a lot of triggers when you say that to me, when you talk like that in front of me. You do, it's the truth. It's the truth. You know, I sat and listened to, you had your grandfather, I have my wife, but more importantly, my late mother-in-law passed away last year, Juanita Abernathy, the great Dr. Juanita Abernathy. And I would sit and just ask her one question, very well thought out, very well placed, very well worded question, if I do say so myself, on purpose, because all I knew the button, I knew the door to touch, and then that would just open up a flood of history. And oh my God, I'm a better man. I'm a better human being. I'm a better husband. I'm a better brother, you know, a better son for having learned all this. And I'm telling you, it's the way to go. It's the way to go. And all this divisiveness that's happening right now, that was the basis of your book, it's ridiculous, man.
That's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
We're all one.
Right.
Yeah. You know, I'll say this, and we don't need to beat up the political drum, what's going on now, the divisiveness and the rhetoric, is a distraction. And as soon as that's gone and that dies down, and it's going to die down, it's not going to go quietly, it's not going to be easy. We can get back to building ourselves together and getting stronger together, which is necessarily what's going to happen. It's just what's going to happen. Yeah. You know, and yeah, it has to. Absolutely.
We can't go backwards. You know, that's the whole deal about this revisionist perspective of we're going to make it something that we used to be. I don't want to be anything we ever were. We have to be something new together.
Thank you.
That's the whole idea. I guess of being progressive is to move ahead, not cling to the past. You know, the past is wonderful to learn from.
Right.
You got to take those lessons and build something new with them.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Absolutely right. You know, this democracy is an experiment. I said it before, I'm going to say it again. This country is only 350 years old, más o menos, more or less. We are infants in the perspective up here. Like if you're looking down from 35,000 feet, in the totality of governments that ruled the world, 350 years. Are you kidding me?
Right.
We're toddlers. We're just getting our feet under us. So this is a hiccup. This had to happen. And we're going to get stronger and progress from this, because change is inevitable, but progress is a choice.
The shame is that so many of those nations have been around a lot longer than us realize that we're adolescents and toddlers as well. Not even adolescents, but toddlers, and they take advantage of us accordingly. And you know,
said.
Sometimes with our arrogance, we walk right into those traps, just like
every time. You know, my half my family comes from Iran. And that is one of the oldest civilizations on this planet. And they're going through a really unfortunate patch right now for the past 40 plus years with a radical theocracy, authoritarian theocracy. And yet, you know, we walk into every trap they set. Walk into it. We do them dirty, and it elegantly finds another solution. You know, no bombs are dropped, no wars are started. Can't say the same for America. We've been at war for all but about 6 years of our existence. It's the truth.
Yep.
It's the truth. The Chinese, another ancient civilization, we walk into every one of their traps.
Yep.
Their patience, the cunning, the
Guidance.
long game.
Yep.
And here we are over here pounding our chest. We've got this clown that just got voted out, and what is, in essence, is a landslide victory. But no one can say that because he's running around saying it's not true. It's not true. I won. Whatever, pal. Whatever. Cool story, bro, as we say. Yep. The Anansi begs to differ.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you know, he's talking that talk. Anyway, I won't beat that thing up. I won't beat that thing up. I love it. I love that. I love the book. I love where you're going. Do you have another one that you're going to be doing soon?
I don't know, man. I've been off to other interests since I've written this book. I haven't written as much. I did go to a spurt right after, because you think, yeah, I'm going to write another one and another one. And, but, I'll see. I'm sure writing never leaves me. I do write from time to time. When I wrote this book, I was like really on a binger though. I was really on a mission to tell this story. So
it was, listen, man, 6 years ago when that whole thing started, and 4 years ago when he took office, I mean, it was just unbelievable. It's like, what in the world? We have learned nothing, it's crazy. Okay. So I know we're talking about your book and I love it. And we're going to put links up in the episode so people can go find it. And I hope purchase it and have you talk to their students, talk to them, do readings, even though we're in a pandemic. Everybody listening and watching this, Mr. Lee is available to read his poetry and discuss matters with you and your group. You do a lot of work, you serve a lot of people, And one thing Uncle Martin said, Martin Luther King Jr., excuse me, was that he who is the greatest is he who serves the most. Would you talk about that? I'm not saying, I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable or weird, but you go out and you're working with these kids who've been put in detention centers like they're some kind of criminal because they have socioeconomic oppression in a racist system. It's just not right. It's not fair. But yet there you are serving that. How did you get involved in that? Is that back from your grandfather as well?
The reason I chose to take the position I'm in now,
yes.
I guess since I came into education, I always wanted to reach those that would least serve, right? That's the whole point of education. And there's no more least served than those who are incarcerated. Like I said, I don't like to make a big deal out of it.
Well, let me make a big deal out of it if you're okay with it, because I really do want to hear you talk about it.
Well, it's probably not.
And if you're not, I'll stop.
Well, no, like I said, it's probably not what anyone thinks. You have to come to a realization to work in a place like I work, that you have one thing you can offer kids. I'm not a missionary. I'm not a savior. I'm not gonna be able to give those kids an inspiring speech that's gonna turn their lives around. They're gonna get out and they're gonna, do a lot differently. Basically, what I have to offer them is an English credit, right?
Okay.
And I talk to them about the discipline of acquiring that. And then how do you translate that into other things you need to do in your life? But beyond that, then I have to realize what my lane is and what my role is. And that's the thing about it, is that the system doesn't want me to uplift those kids or remove them for, the system wants to punish them. That's what they're there for. They committed a crime. They're there to be punished, And so you have to, everything you do to assist these kids is like an underground railroad.
Wow.
You have to sneak it to them.
You're right.
You have to, and I can't say sneaking. I don't want them to think I'm sneaking any contraband into the system. But you have to try to find ways to give them access to things are good for kids.
Correct.
What the system will allow. I can't even staple their papers together, bro, or give them paper clips, because that can be used as weapons. So it's just it's different than what you think. The service is in my humanity of sitting down and just looking these young men in the eye. And you have to understand that I've only been teaching there since COVID has been in effect. I've never been in a room with these young men.
Oh, so you're doing this all virtually?
I do it from where I'm sitting at right now is where I teach from. And
oh, wow.
They're all in a facility, and I speak to them where they are, and I teach them where they are. And they have a program on computers that they access, and I facilitate and try to assist them as much as I can to get them through that curriculum to earn the credit. That's what I got for them, bro.
Wow. You know, man, we could be on this thing. This could be like the 5-hour podcast, but it can't do that.
Right, but it's, you know, like I said, it's not probably not what people think. I don't have a perspective on it like most people would think. That, you know, I'm not, like I said, I'm not a missionary, bro. I'm not there to save kids in that way. I'm just,
well, you know,
you can't.
I got to be honest with you.
Fast.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have them for a long period of time. It's just you have to do what you could do while you
in that little narrow window of opportunity. Yes, you know, I know a little bit more about it. I mean, because my wife, you know, so I know what you're going through and what it entails and what it's like. And you know, you say you've got the right spirit and your head's in the right place and your heart's in the right place because you're not in there with the savior complex. Yeah. Again, I see that happen a lot with people of a certain persuasion. And there's a hubris and arrogance to that as well, as we discussed earlier. We won't beat that drum too hard. But, you know,
it's not me. It's not on me. I can't forgive them for anything they've done. I can't do any of that. And a lot of those kids have done horrible things, bro. You have to understand that too.
Some of them have done horrible things, I'm sure.
I've never read a student's file yet because I really don't want to know what they've done. No.
Correct. You see, that's wisdom right there.
You know, I just want to deal with them in the moment.
That's beautiful, Rodney. Wow. You know, thank you. I'll say thank you on their behalf, and I don't know them, and I don't have any power, but I'm going to say thank you because I know that's there. You're coming from the right place, and ironically, that makes you a saint doing a missionary's work, even though that's not what you're looking at it as or doing. Because you know what? You're showing up and you're doing it. And it's as simple as that. Anyone who's listening to it, you want to help? You don't have to go do what Rodney's doing. You don't have to sit here with, you know, these Apple earphones in and do podcasts and start raging against the machine like this guy. You can do something as simple as go down to the local homeless shelter. You can do and serve food. Or take, you know what they need? Most homeless people need socks, clean socks, clean socks. I know, weird. That's what they love. That's what they need. Things that we take for granted. There are any number of things that you can do that one can do and start to serve. And the thing that happens, I can speak about this for myself. You know, I've been involved with a number of groups, and I know how you feel. It's weird talking about it because it sounds like you're going, well, look what I did, right? But it's not like that at all, man, because who the hell am I, right? If you're having troubles in your life, if you've got anxieties, if you've got depression, if you've got that up and down roller coaster of, you know, happy one minute, sad the next, you know, anxiety, mania, general like malaise, you're not feeling that good about yourself, go and help people that are less fortunate than you. In whatever capacity you can, just make it a little tiny movement. You'll be amazed at what happens. You'll be amazed at what happens to you and through you and in that situation. And for me, that was the beginning of me really seeing and understanding for the first time, like on a cellular level, that we are all connected. Like, oh, wow, all this BS of religions that I never really prescribed to, and all this, you know, talk about, you know, serving, there's something to it. There is something to it. So I salute you.
Well, thank you. I want to say as an educator, though, that we have an opportunity as educators to impact students no matter which ends of the economic spectrum they're on. A lot of times we think that, you know, less fortunate students are the ones who always need our help. We have to understand that some students from affluent households need support and help in different ways. And we all need one another. So, you know, we just need to, you know, take our opportunities where we are. I believe that all teachers are working and doing God's work, man. And, you know, and like I said, most teachers are really humble about what they do. You know, I'm just, you know, on the other end of it is that there's a contract involved, and I get to eat and I get a place to live out of what I do. So I really don't have a right to hold it up and say, look what I did. You know, it's a fair exchange for what I do. I went to school, I did things to get here, and you know, I can make the best or the worst of it. But you know, I'm by no means a saint, because I don't know if they didn't pay me if I'd still go do it.
Remarkably honest. I love it.
I mean, any of it. So, you know, like I said, that's why I just really, I'm humble, but I'm also honest in that, you know, this is my chosen profession. This is what I signed up to do. And no matter what happens with me and my students, see, a lot of teachers want to take credit. Like if their kids do something great, and you know, then they're like, "Oh, I teach the AP students, and they're marvelous, and they have this and these accolades." You never hear a teacher who teaches low end students that aren't performing well. They don't take any part of that credit, right? They're not a part of that. Well, then it's the parents' fault, and it's the state's, it's everybody else's fault. So right. You can't be in this game to take credit for what kids do, for what they learn, or what they achieve.
Well, you can, but then you have to do what you do, is keep it in perspective and take credit for all of their failures and all of your responsibility in that. Because if you can't have one without the other, man.
Right. You're simply a rung in that student's life.
That's right.
They get to step upon you, and where they go on their journey up is up to them. But you know, it's like I said, it's just, and it's. I don't want to be philosophical about it, but it's just, you know.
Go ahead, be philosophical.
No,
it's called The Art of Being Dar. We're having the art of the Rodney Lee experience right now.
Yeah.
That
whole point of altruism, though, you know, it kind of falls flat on his face, because even I get still more from my kids. Like I worked in the office, I was an administrator for many years, and it's really draining, and it takes something from you. When you work with kids, and no matter the capacity, it fills you up. You get back way more than you put out. If it's just an attitude, if it's just a perspective on how I get to see life through their eyes, I get more magic from them than they ever would get from me. So,
right. Yeah.
Very selfish, man.
No, there's no doubt about it. It's great to be around kids because, man. Yeah.
We do what's good for us.
Yeah.
And if we help others out in that process, that's cool.
That is cool. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Man, we could go for hours. I'll tell you what. I want to talk with you some more.
Okay.
Because you got a lot to say. And more importantly, I think it's an interesting and useful and valuable perspective. And I know a lot of people will get value from it and enjoy it and share it. And so even though you're out there in that mirage called Las Vegas,
hey, real people here, man. Real people here.
Real people here. That's right.
Real people here.
It is true. You know, it's so funny. On a side note, we wind this thing down. The first time I drove into Vegas, I was like, dude, this is like we're in the middle of the desert. And then all of a sudden the lights, you know, you're literally in the middle of the desert. Now, look, I lived in the desert of southern Iran.
Okay.
I lived in a city called Shiraz for about 3 years. It's in the middle of the desert, just like Vegas, middle of nowhere. It's a massive city of 1 million people, you know. But it's like the desert's unforgiving, and the desert has enormous wisdom and history to it. It's a strange thing. Most people don't really, because most people aren't near a desert. There are only very specific parts, right? But it's a sacred place. And I mean, there's a reason all those hippies used to like to go trip balls and go out to Joshua Tree and stuff around to the desert, right? They drop their whatever acid, mushrooms, whatever, and go out there and commune with nature, you know? It's a powerful place. It's a very powerful place. Yeah. And this has been a very powerful conversation. I really have appreciated this. Yeah, I like this. This is good times. So do me one favor. I like to sell products, and I want you to put your book up one more time so people can see it. I'm going to put the link in there. This is his book, his latest book.
Along These
Trails.
Yes, sir.
Poetry by Mr. Rodney Lee and photography by Mr. Rodney Lee.
Thank you. I like to say one more thing about the book. Yeah. I begin the book by asking Anansi to show me truth. And at the end of the book, when I come 360, because, you know, not every hero's journey, you have to return to where you began.
Right.
And Anansi says to me, basically, rather than truth, seek peace. Right. He says,
right on. That's a beautiful sentiment, man.
And that's really what the book is about. We can spend our whole life looking for truth because we're always going to fight somebody if our end result is that we're looking for truth. But if we're trying to seek peace, we can do what it takes to find a way to make connections like that web that Anansi spins that brings everybody to that center, man.
You know, that is a beautiful sentiment during this Christmas season as we're doing this on the 15th of December. I can think of nothing like more fitting to kind of wrap up just today's episode here than saying seek peace. You know, there's so much wisdom in that. The older I get, yeah, truth is great and it's important. There's no question about it. But peace and love, and I know I sound like a hippie and I don't care, but honest to God, we seek to find those two things, and really there's nothing to seek. Just like you can't bestow freedom upon an already sovereign, free spirit, you don't need to look out from that spirit to see peace and love. It is the nature of that spirit.
Yes,
yeah. Sorry, I got a little philosophical and weird, but it's
great,
true.
Man.
I love it, man. I love it. Hey, listen, thank you so much.
Well, thank you, man. I'm humble.
Yeah, this has really been a pleasure. I really enjoyed it. And I want to give another shout out to Stan Henderson for hooking us up and making this happen. We're going to have to do this again.
Right, man.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Rodney.
Yes, sir. Okay. We'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you again. Bye-bye.